All right, welcome back. Today's guest I've known for over a decade now, which is crazy to think about. Tom, thank you for joining us on the pod, Bootstrapping to Billions.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
So, Tom, before we get things going, catch the audience early, hook them in. Hopefully, they're going to watch this whole episode because it's going to be amazing. But if you could just tease them a little bit, what do you think that they're going to get out of today if they do watch to the end?
Well, you're going to get first a raw exit story, a bittersweet exit story, a transition period that I think you're all going to really relate to, and then some really tactical next steps that I have taken now in my new company that really can translate to everyone really well with trying to get their systems set up right inside their own organization.
And it's all about saving time, right? So we want to be able to put things in place that are going to amplify the human function, hopefully save people time, grief, energy, effort, all these things that go into operational excellence that's going to result in equity being built in your business and more valuations and all these great things. But a lot of people say it all the time. You do it, you live it, right? We're going to link to your channel as well on YouTube, which you can check out. You have like so many videos where you literally are in the weeds doing this stuff, teach, train, equipped. And for the audience, for expectation, man, I said it at the beginning, a decade. We've known each other for like over a decade at this point, and I got to witness all of this stuff, right? So hopefully the things that we're going to cover today in today's episode, I as a spectator got the privilege to be able to watch from the sidelines you doing and you just executing for like a long extended period of time at a very high level. And then to see what you're doing today is like awesome and amazing. Hopefully we enjoy the episode.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
So take us back. It's 2000 and well, we met like 2014, 15, 16 era. You were building Checkmate, right? Was it Checkmate Digital?
It was Checkmate Digital. Yeah,
Right.
it was Checkmate Digital. I was a big chess fan in college. The patterns that the pieces made at the end of the game, the checkmate, I just thought it was nice. So I named the company Checkmate Digital. We did UI UX design for B2B SaaS applications. It wasn't always that clear, but that's the clarity that we had towards the end there in 2017, 18. That's really where I got my start. My background is in philosophy. I like to say I read a lot more Plato than programming. So I was a non-technical founder with a design company. And my business partner at the time, did go to school for design and graphic design. So he was incredible. And we bootstrapped this UI UX design company from the basement of a building for a long time to try to build literally the basement of a building for a very long time, for like 3-4 years. And then, business picked up and we really started doing some fun things.
Yeah, it ended up in a really
Checkmate.
sick office in like the center of New Haven, Connecticut, like right by Yale, which was an amazing thing. And you did a ton of work with the CT ecosystem, which we could probably tap into for a second. But like you also hit it at a really good time, right? So like at that point, there was so many people that wanted to build cool things, and the startup ecosystem was picking up, and Connecticut specifically was also investing heavily into the startup ecosystem. We were doing our own accelerators and things at the time, but not a lot of technical talent and not a lot of people that solved that problem.
It was a good time to be in Connecticut for sure, doing this type of work. Like we did work for CT Innovations and a whole bunch of portfolio companies. Fast forward, a couple of years, some of our clients ended up going public or getting acquired by, some really big organizations. So like we hit it at the right time. Absolutely. It was certainly a case of the right place at the right time. I didn't have the idea that I would be running a UI UX agency after college. It was just kind of something I fell into. And then as I fell into it, I realized all these different components that came into play, like how a user would engage with the application or what contract negotiations were like, and trying to, position renewals and get referrals and all these different things that you need to learn about running an agency, which I didn't particularly like. I didn't actually enjoy running an agency for agency's sake. It felt a lot like, just try to go find another customer, and then you got to go, back and find another customer, and it's exhausting. The type of business didn't create recurring revenue very often. Once you design, a login flow and the whole UI UX of an application, you're kind of done uh, until that application becomes successful enough to add new features, right? So it's not a huge
It's like a
recurring revenue.
hamster wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely like needing to go to events and try to network for the first time with a lot of people, and it
But
was
it
just
is a good way
exhausting.
to get going, especially, again, bootstrapping, which, yeah, dude, you have a awesome bootstrapping story from start to finish,
Yeah,
right?
the network I was able to build has been quite useful and helpful, and getting to cross paths with people like you have just been awesome over the last couple of years, especially. So
Creating value for a decade for sure. Dude,
yeah,
so like service businesses, a lot of our audience, like the bootstrappers, investpreneurs listening, some of them are already in the grind. So like some of them are already literally looking at a fire in the corner of their screen, like as they're listening, hopefully. Some of them are thinking about getting started, right? Everything starts somewhere, exit one, exit your day job, make your business your job. Service and agency is typically that first thing that a lot of people do jump into. What should somebody know?
that's a great question. I think going in with your eyes wide open that there are things that you don't know is something you should be aware of. Baseline, right? There's going to be a lot of things that you're going to need to learn, and you got to be comfortable with that. To give you a shortcut as to the things that I found most useful running a services company, it was to hyper fixate on onboarding. That's everything from the first half of the sales process to the first half of like the internal operations, customer setup process for whatever that means for you. And at X-Ray, that was the thing that I lived and died by. It was how I became technical for the first time, setting up a lot of no code automations, using a tool like Zapier to just like create new clients inside of QuickBooks, or set up Google Drive folders for the first time with all the same name, or a Slack channel that is named the same as the QuickBooks customer and the Google Drive folder, like all of those things, being really meticulous about them, because onboarding is the first time that a customer enters your systems, and it's the first impression that they get. So their welcome email, their kickoff call, calendar event, their invoice, all of those things that are the first touch points. If you can focus on those first touch points, you end up inadvertently setting yourself up with really clean systems that you don't need to go back and maintain and delete and archive and create a bunch of crap. That onboarding moment is so critical, and it's outsized in terms of its impact in the rest of your internal systems and the rest of your engagement with your client.
I dig it, dude. I could actually like reflect back sitting in your office in New Haven and you taking me through that exact thing that you had built yourself and the sense of like pride and purpose that like literally radiated from you in that moment of time. Like it resonated. Like literally, I can reflect on it today. That's how much it actually did hit home. But let's unpack for the audience. So, we're talking about first impression. So obviously there's the client facing value that's being created. But then from a systems perspective, is there also value that's being created and captured or like what's the whole picture of why?
Definitely. So for the client, you want to give them really clean touch points for the first time, right? When they say, yes, I am willing to give you money and I trust the words that you're saying, and I'm expecting some variation of those results, right? They're trusting you. That is their first impression. But also in your internal systems, when I'm talking about the name of the customer, right? I'll take an example. Air France was a customer of a client of mine, and inside of their internal systems, they had Air France spelt three different ways, with a space, without a space, with a hyphen, right? And it might not seem like it matters, but it does when you're talking about doing this services business for a year, 5 years, 10 years. How long are you going to be doing this? And how consistent can you be from day one as you are on day 1000? And those consistencies pay dividends when you onboard a new team member. So when I'm talking about first impressions, I'm not only talking about the customer, I'm talking about your team. Now, when you onboard a new, AAA best talented person that you've ever had, right? They come in the door and they start looking under the hood. Are they going to see a dumpster fire, or are they going to see a pristine, clean machine? Right? Like, that's the question. And I don't know, right? Setting up your internal onboarding system to be clean and crisp and efficient will allow that new talent to come in and say, whoa, they know their stuff, right? They might not, the client might not see under the hood and might not see all the things that are going wrong. But as a founder, as an operator, right, it stops with you. Are you going to set things up differently every time? Or are you going to set up a system that allows you to set it up consistently every time? And then you have the opportunity of tweaking and refining over time, which is way different than just your list of 50 to dos for every new customer you get.
Which we see all the time, right? So when we're doing long-term equity management with clients, a lot of it is trying to get a lot of this stuff in place because they never did. And when you start to ask them why, right, 10 years later or 15 years later into the business, it's because like we didn't do it at the beginning and then it became too much. It's like start right, finish right, keep it simple in a sense. Dude, so let's pull the veil back a little bit more, take it back. So I know we're going to cover the exit, right? So we teased that
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, but let's just let the audience know why there's potentially a platform for you to stand on in terms of listening to you from an operational excellence perspective and like what you're doing today, right? So if you were to paint the picture of today, what does that look like and why should the audience care?
Yeah. So today I run an organization called X-Ray Tech. We do workflow design for enterprises and small businesses alike. And by workflow design, I'm talking about designing digital systems that amplify people and design the way that people work. So AI and automation and all the fancy buzz terms, like all of those things, absolutely true. We touch them, we play with them, we build different pieces of software, absolutely. But we do it for the purpose of designing the work that humans still need to do. Because for the foreseeable future, believe it or not, you're still required inside of your company, right? And all of these tools are going to be changed in and out. So at X-Ray Tech, we both build software that makes it easier to do workflow design, and we design the way that work happens for large organizations and small individuals too.
Dig it, dude. And like, yeah, great people make great companies and hopefully better processes make them even better.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it enjoyable work to do. When you're working with a client and you're taking somebody on, like what are some of the first things that you'll tackle? Like where do you
Yeah.
start first?
The first thing we end up doing is holding interviews. We call it a workflow snapshot. So things like defining what tools are used in a workflow, seeing any existing materials like a spreadsheet or a checklist or things that ground and function as the workflow today, right? If your organization is operating, guess what? You have a workflow. It might not be consistent, it might not be efficient, but it exists. And that's something to kind of celebrate, right? You should be happy that you have some repeatable enough process that gives you a business. And that's awesome.
It
So
is, yeah.
right? Like that's pretty actually remarkable to begin with, right? So that's where we start is we interview and audit the existing workflows today. We define it, we map it out in a flow diagram, and we create, or transition whatever checklist they have into a more structured requirements list that our team of workflow consultants can really put on the chopping block to design a better version of. So the first thing we do is audit and understand how are you able to repeat this process today.
Is that like a video thing? Like you're asking them to just record their screen going through something, or like how do you do the audit?
Typically it's over a Zoom call, recorded Zoom, where it's like a show and tell, right?
Okay.
Show
So
me the
you're prompting
spreadsheet,
it in
show
a
me this
sense.
thing, because we'll ask really in-depth questions,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people, I'd say, I mean, you can't quote me statistically on this, but from what I see, 75 to 80% of organizations run off of a spreadsheet or multiple spreadsheets. And that's individual consultants and Fortune 1000 companies. Like spreadsheets run the world right now. Like that's the way it is. And that's okay. That's okay. It is the lowest common denominator of technical expectations that people have, right? You're expected, right? That was on your resume coming out of college, right? I can use Microsoft Excel. Right. And now it's like I can use ChatGPT, right? Like that's like the accolade, right, on the resume. But that's the reality of today. Everything runs on a spreadsheet. So the vast majority of our work is translating a spreadsheet into an automated, systematized process that other people can be trained on, and workflows can have human checkpoints. And it becomes really clear for new members of the team, what decisions do I need to make? how do I generate the same or similar outcomes? And we design the automated systems to serve that to the people so that it's really clear for them what work they even need to do.
So you're designing for the person.
Yeah. We
So
design for
you're
the person
understanding the
first.
process. So
Yeah.
you're identifying the outcome. You're understanding the process to get there. But then at the end of the day, the work you're doing, the intentional work, is really for the people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because, Chris, I mean, ultimately, whatever to do management app you use really doesn't matter.
What are the top
Like,
ones?
yeah, I don't care if you use Rike, Airtable, Monday.com, Notion, Asana, Trello, Jira. I don't care. It doesn't matter what your to-do list is. It matters that you have a to-do list. And it matters that your team knows how to make a to-do. It matters that they're accurate and relevant and created or generated or logged in some way when you're trying to delegate things. Like those are the things that matter. I don't care where it's stored. Like all of these SaaS apps, they're commodities. They all do the same or very, very similar things. And what we're talking about is like the UI. Like if you really like it when you check the box in Asana and like that little unicorn comes across your screen, great, they got you. I think it's cool. It's nice. Am I going to pay for Asana? Absolutely not. But like some people like it and some organizations pay for it. Like Monday.com, I would never use Monday.com. Why? Because they store things in JSON objects and I think that's dumb. But like, some people really like Monday.com and like that's fine. But the system should be agnostic to where your to-dos are, right? And it should be designed around the work that the people need to do. And really, workflows are repeatable, and there's a handful of them that run the organization and make the organization successful.
Dude, and you know firsthand that this stuff matters, because take us back to 2015 to 2019. You lived this life, you're operating this creative agency, Checkmate, and then you went on and exited. Like, take us through that experience.
Sure, sure. So the exit. At the time of the exit, it was October 2019. I had bootstrapped to 20 people. It was a combination of developers and designers, and some strategists and project managers and marketers, stuff like that. And to be very honest, I was burnt out of the services business, and I didn't want to run an agency anymore. I wanted to try something else. I wanted to try something that had recurring revenue in the fabric of the business. So we had a really great partner, mindtrust.com. They're awesome. They're a global agency out of New Haven. And I just had a really frank conversation with their founder. And ultimately, they sort of acqui-hired us. They took the entirety of the staff. I got a nice golden ticket to go not start another design agency, which was not a hard requirement for me to do. All of 2020, I like to say everyone liked to join me working from home because that was my plan. And then COVID hit, and I ended up being a solo consultant, essentially making onboarding processes. That 100-step Zap that I referenced earlier, I made onboarding processes for other agencies, and I said, this is a way I can make a ton of money. Is I'll just make this onboarding automation and I'll tweak it for every organization, because you have a CRM, and then you have a task in to-do management, and then you have a file store, and then you have a accounting system, right? And all of these categories of software, I would just swap out QuickBooks for FreshBooks, or Drive for OneDrive, or whatever, right? HubSpot for Pipedrive. And I did really well. And then I thought that I wasn't going to found another company again. And I decided to work for a couple different agencies more directly. And I realized that not everybody wanted to see the same thing in the world, right? The goal was not to empower people, but to maximize profits. And that just didn't sit right with me. So I decided that I was going to build something new, X-Ray Tech now. And my co-founder, Mark Campos, incredible. He was at Google for 10 years, Google and Waze. And he had never used a lot of these SaaS tools, because the way that Google is structured, they're really not allowed to use a Notion or an Airtable or any of these other things. They're like not allowed to
Yeah, it
put
makes
any
sense, but never
information.
think about that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So like he ran on spreadsheets, right?
Google, yeah, Google
Yeah.
Sheets.
So like that's what he did. That's what he did. So I like showed him all this stuff, and we realized like, hold on a minute. Like this was pre ChatGPT, and we're like, hold on a second. What we're talking about is designing the way that work happens for people. And we think that this is a job role. Like this is a defined new discipline. It's called workflow design. And people have it kind of as a secondary skill set, right? You'll be an operations coordinator or a marketer or whatever, and you'll like, yeah, I set up the HubSpot automation, or yeah, I set up the whatever little automation. I use Zapier to do this thing, and it's a secondary discipline. But what happens when you get to a mid market scale, or you're doing like $2 to $5 million of business, or you have a team of 20, things kind of start breaking because the person who is leading finance can't be the one to manage all the automations that run finance. They just can't. They need a subject matter expert to rely on to say, look, I need these automations to do this, to format this information like this for my finance team. And that's what we call workflow consultants and workflow designers. And that's the role that we decided to create in a recurring revenue model. So we're retained on a flat retainer by, mid-market companies to be the dedicated workflow consultant, and interview people and design, a better system and implement those better systems and manage it and do change management and training and rollout, all of that stuff, which is the work that a workflow designer will be doing
Mm-hmm.
as a defined discipline. So
So that's actually a question I had earlier. So we were talking about you creating it, but is what I'm hearing that it's equal part creation as implementation. So are you like teach training and equipping?
yes, yes. So that is one thing that we were really intentional about. We do not want to be gatekeeping knowledge. And like our YouTube is a perfect example of that, right? We just give away literally hundreds of tutorials, right, on how to set up automated systems between X tool and Y tool. And like we just give that away. So after we interview and audit, document, design, and implement some new automated or AI system, we facilitate training and we teach those people in a recorded, documented way how they can evolve that system. So a really good example is like in a automated system that takes your call recordings and translates those call recordings into maybe a project requirements document, or takes the call recordings and puts them into a flow diagram. Those are two systems that we have internally, right? We teach, and in my case, the sales lead, who's particularly non-technical, right? We teach that person, this is how you edit the system prompts that generate this outcome. So now they're empowered and they're like, oh, I can edit this copy, right? Like I can edit whatever the goal says. Yeah, sure. I want it to be this. And that gives, these people at our clients' organizations just so much more empowerment to be able to edit, change, refine the outcome or the system over time, because it's not just about setting up a perfect system and then walking away, right? I had a 100-step zap at X-Ray Tech and then I never needed to edit it. Well, kind of, right? It's the speed to refinement. It is how quickly can you iterate, because the business is constantly iterating. So you need the systems to be able to iterate. But in order for the systems to iterate, you need people that understand the system.
Is that your watermark though? It's simple enough for sales.
Maybe it should be. Maybe it should be. But it's not today. It's not today. It's actually let the robots do the routine so humans can do the remarkable. That's our tag.
That's a
For
pretty good
now.
tagline. Yeah. So when you look at YouTube and you see all these AI automation agencies, like what do you think?
Grifters.
Right? So talk
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, they really
Because
don't
I think
know.
that big thing that I want to accomplish with this channel, man, and this specifically this podcast is surfacing like real stuff. Like I want to talk to people who are literally living this life, have authentically done so for a really long period of time, and then share the actual learned insights, the learned experience. And yeah, dude, talk about so like I see it and I have a feeling, and I'm not in
Yeah.
your world.
So there's one YouTuber that I know of with over 100,000 subscribers. She's Layla from Process Driven. She would be fantastic on this podcast. She's
I'm a big
incredible in
fan of her
like,
content. Yeah.
yeah, Layla Process Driven is really good.
Click
The
up.
other ones that are like 500,000 subscribers, you think of like Leah Motley or some other like, I made a $1 million a month AI agency automation business. Like it's just bullshit. Like they just don't actually know how to build the mechanics of a business. I mean, they might have some clients, sure, but more than likely those subscribers are either bought or they transitioned from a previously grifted YouTube channel like Web3 or something that was like hot at the time, and those subscribers aren't legitimately interested in like their new niche.
What do
So
you
I
think
would say,
the limitations of AI and AI automations are from what we hear on these channels versus what actual practical lived experience is, having done this for as long as you have?
yeah, trying to put this concisely, people make it happen, right? All these AI and automation systems amplify people. If your intent and your expectation is that it replaces people, you are sorely just misguided. It's not practical today as of, August, whatever, that we're filming this. It's just not practical. Might it be practical in a year from now? Maybe. But today, absolutely not. Unless you're a one person company that is like blind trusting, all of these AI agents that you somehow set up and you can read all of their outputs all day. Like, I just don't see how it's actually practical. The best systems that we've ever created and we've seen create these human checkpoints. They are moments in time for a person to make a decision, and then automations and AI go do a thing. Report back for another human checkpoint. These completely autonomous expectations are just fabricated. It is just clickbait. That's not how the real
Sizzle.
world actually works. I mean, it's all sizzle and no steak, for sure. It's just trying to get your clicks.
Dude, so one of the things that we put out there a long time, like maybe 6 or 7 months ago, was a benchmark that we wanted to gear towards, which was value per head count. You earlier in our banter back and forth pre-episode also mentioned something similar as kind of like that North Star. How do you think about it? So like when you're taking this approach and you're looking at an organization, like what is your benchmark for good and better?
Well, that's a great question. Good is if you can actually measure a process. Because if you can measure it, how long it takes as a baseline measurement, then it is by nature repeatable and consistent enough to be measured.
So
So
time bound.
good, right. Good is that you can measure it. It takes me 45 to client onboarding because I have this checklist and I go and I create all these things. It takes me 45 minutes. Fantastic. You can measure that, right? You have a checklist, you can start the timer. That is good.
Definition of exists.
Right. Definition of exists. For a lot of businesses, that alone is an achievement, right? Because it's not digitized or it's not consistent or it's a bunch of phone calls between people that is not tracked. Like there are a ton of businesses, physical and non-physical, that I've seen that cannot actually put bounds around the time consumption of a process. Like that's really hard in its own right. So if you can do that, that's good, right? Great is this is everything that the process does. This is the 10 items on my checklist, and these are the two that I need to do, right? Because those two things, like back to our onboarding example, I need to make sure that my customer name and my lead email address is correct in the deal before I mark it as closed won. And if I do that, then it creates the customer in QuickBooks and sets up the drive folder and does research on the domain and does all these things because I made sure that those two pieces of data were correct. And then I marked it as closed won, and then all the other parts of my to-do list gets done for me, right? That's great, but that's aspirational for a lot of organizations right now.
And your process then from going from good to great, because yeah, testament to the fact that if it existing, like that is a major milestone that matters, especially when it comes time to, building equity inside of the business, for sure, without a doubt. And most folks don't get there. So major milestone, good is amazing. Good almost is great
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when it comes to just that. But like legitimately making it better, it's about the function of the human. Is that how you're assessing it? So you're like looking at this workflow and you're saying, hey, this is the thing that the person needs to do. Like
Yeah.
how do you actually think about it?
Well, so a lot of it goes actually onto the individual. Like, how does the individual think about it? Like, do you feel like this is a waste of your time? Like, do you feel like this is repetitive work? Do you feel like this is fulfilling work or what you want to spend your time on? Like, those are the questions that we ask the individual that we're trying to help. And they have a feeling about that, right? Like you ask any business owner, what is a waste of your time? They're going to know. They're going to feel that. So
Anyone
that
really, right? Yeah.
right, right. So answering those really simple questions, and like at the end of the process, you're like, wow, I don't need to do those things anymore. Like you see the weight lift off their shoulders and they feel less stressed. And like that's the workflow design that we're talking about. That's designing for the person that we care about. Like I don't want you to spend all your time in XYZ software. Like I don't want that. I want you to spend as little time in software as possible, as little work as possible, so that you can go home to your family or that you can focus on the things that you think are going to 10x the business, right? Not the things that are required to just keep the business alive, right? It's like there's work before you can even get to the work, right?
Yeah, it's time
And that's the
leverage.
thing.
You're
Yeah, it's
manufacturing time
absolutely.
leverage, which oftentimes creates happiness as much as it does money.
Yeah,
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 right? Or realistically, sustained happiness creates as much money as possible. So,
yeah.
what are the mechanisms that actually accomplish this? If it's not, Chat GPT, what is it? How is it done?
It's usually done by stitching together the existing tools that an organization's already using, stitching together using a tool like Zapier.com or Make.com or Pipedream.com. Those are all different automation providers, we call it. So automation providers facilitate automations for your organization. It's no different than a new category of software, like a CRM or an accounting software. You need an automation provider. An automation provider will facilitate the movement of data between your software tools. We built a tool called xray.tools, which is an automation search engine. So if you're curious about what you can automate with the tools that you're already using, you can go to xray dot tools, tools, and just search your software. So if you're using monday.com or you're using Trello or you're using Google Drive or Gmail or Outlook or whatever, you can just search those tools and it can say in plain English what you can automate with those tools. Okay. And that's on every automation provider. So Zapier, Microsoft Power Automate, Make.com, and it's an open source automation provider. All those different ones are indexed in X-ray tools. Fantastic. So you got to stitch them together. That's one task. The other one is to have a thing called an operational database. Now, sounds technical. It's not that technical. It is simply, you can think of it as a glorified Google spreadsheet, right? That has the operationally relevant data that your automations will reference. So a lot of times you'll actually use multiple automation providers. You'll use Zapier and Make, right, to run automations because some tools are supported on one and not supported on the other. Some is more cost effective. There's a whole bunch of reasons that you might use one automation provider over another. And we use several. We use a lot of them, right? Internally too. And what happens when you have an operational database is you can then drop information off into this operational database and then retrieve information from it by another automation. So this is how you build this fabric of automations and AI and systems to support people. Because every once in a while, there'll be a notification in Slack or Microsoft Teams that says, hey, this thing just got created. You should be aware of it. Click here, right? And the person says, oh, I got a new file from a new client. Let me click on that, right? And that's so much more of an enjoyable experience than needing to go through your email and find that email from the sales guy who forwarded the message with the attachment from, the client, right? You don't want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. So how does the system serve that to the person? And that might be a couple automations and an operational database and declaring that Slack is the place that we're going to get announcements,
Can you
right?
take us through what the construct of this operational, and I don't want to put you on the spot if you can't show it or share it or whatever, but I'm curious what the construct of this operational database is. Like, what is it?
Yeah. So you can think of it as a spreadsheet, just like a log of the objects in your business. So objects is a bit of a technical term, but if you're selling, let's say you're selling perfumes or widgets, right? You might have a whole bunch of different types of widgets. That might be in a table called products, right? You have all these different products that have all these different parameters, right? Size, weight, color, inventory, whatever. That's one table. In another table, you might have your customers, right? People who placed orders for these different widgets. And in another table, you might have suppliers, right? I get these parts for this widget from this organization. And the way that all three of those things relate to each other is just stored in this operational database. And when you get a transaction from Shopify, right, that information, that new transaction might be logged in a transactions table. And everything from Shopify happens there, but also that custom order that John got on the phone and got a new custom order for this widget. Now you can add that into this operational database because it's not in Shopify, but it's this new custom order that is stored in here. So it's really like a home base of all of the things that you want to keep track of inside the company. And as new orders come in, you might announce that inside of the orders channel in your Slack or Microsoft Teams so that you guys can talk about, oh, hey, this is a custom order. Maybe we need to treat them a different way, or we should do a manual follow-up this time, or whatever it may be. You get to bake in automation rules based off of the data that's inside of this, operational database.
So
Does that
you're
make sense?
identifying and mapping all of these things inside of your business, and then you're creating the relationships between them. And
Exactly.
how are you organizing that? So how do you visualize, how do you inventory and organize and visualize that with the client prior to creating the database itself?
So, I mean, it's back to the interviews, but a lot of them have a lot of clients specifically have like fragments of that data in other applications already, right? Like task or to-do management, inventory management, sales orders. A lot of them have sources of truth already, and we're just aggregating them or syncing them into an operational database to be able to build those relations between them, to be able to build automation rules on top of it.
So you're pretty much identifying systems, like existing sources of truth, existing systems,
Mhm.
and then you're doing the mapping, was the relational mapping. And then from the relational map, which is the database design, and then you're doing the automation creation off of that.
Yeah,
And then it
and those automations correspond to workflows, right? So when one event happens, now a person needs to do XYZ. They need to make a decision, they need to notify somebody, they need to call somebody, they need to do something. And that those are the systems that we try to document and automate and augment with AI in some way.
And for the audience, I mean, we're talking like fairly high level things inside of this episode. Hopefully, we're going to do another episode sometime soon where we'll actually do it like a teach, train, equip, show it, and we
Very
could we
happy
could
to,
do it
yeah.
together. But for those listening, this stuff matters, and it matters because this is how you create operational equity. Like this is quite literally how you are building operational equity inside of your business, and you're doing so because you're identifying, how your business works, you're reducing the friction points, you're increasing the transferability of your business. And going through this process, you're also identifying areas of risk. So this is quite literally, if you were to come in to Bootstrap or AI, this is how you're going to go through a process of building operational equity and then partnering with somebody like Tom is like get it done because you guys get it done, right? So also it'd be cool if maybe we can co-host some boot camps or figure out a way to actually,
Happy to.
equip some of the audience, to be able to activate some of these things. So I want to be respectful of your time because like this has been, a deep dive digest into, get to know us, for the audience. But yeah, if we can set up some time that we could do a teach, train, equipped, visually show some of this stuff. Hopefully, maybe we get some engagement. We can identify, some things that would be key value levers to
Yeah,
drive
absolutely.
value drivers inside of the business. Where do
Let
you
us know.
think, things are going to go? So this is where it's been. You've been in the weeds doing this for a really long time. You are a practitioner. You are building and running and operating a service-based business, which is a great cash flow business to start as a bootstrapper, but an awful business to own for the long term. Eventually everybody kind of goes through that transition that you went through as well and wants to exit in some way, shape, or form because, the pain that you experience is very real. And then you took that pain and you solved it through the service you're selling again today. Right. So you literally live this pain and now you're repurposing a solution to others, making it a little bit better. It is what it is today. But if you were to put that futurist hat on, right? If you were to go back and play some chess, where do you think things are going to be going in like, let's just say 18 months? What do you
Mhm.
think is in store for the future of a workflow optimization.
Yeah. I think so. One of my core assumptions is that people enjoy working with people, transactioning with people, collaborating with people. And I think that there's going to be one, an ecosystem of businesses that are strictly people to people commerce. And there's going to be another ecosystem that is strictly AI to AI commerce, where AIs are buying and selling things for each other for, whatever purposes. In the middle is going to be, in my view, a really interesting system of businesses that want to adopt AI and automated systems, this like translation layer of people who can communicate with another person, right? Like you and I are doing right now, and also understand the technicalities of what's possible. And that person sitting in the middle, we believe is a workflow designer, and is their role will be to be that translation layer. I think 18 months from now, that middle pie is going to be enormous, where you see people from architecture, from design, from trucking, from roofing, from whatever, all these walks of life are going to join this middle sector of being translators, because whatever industry you're in right now, that entire industry is going to be interested in automated and AI systems in some regard. And they'll need a translator who understand their specific niche, their specific needs as a roofer, as a insert your discipline there. And there'll be a market for someone to be reskilled as a workflow designer to be able to talk the talk from a technical side and also implement on the human side. And I think that's going to be a really fulfilling career progression for a lot of people that went from, whatever went to school for into this new kind of frontier.
That's a cool way of thinking about and segmenting the market problems in which people solve. So you're almost saying one portion of the market is going to be agent to agent. So unless you're building infrastructure involved with that, you're out of that. Right.
Right.
So like carve that out. So almost
Right.
it's like figure out the things that fall within that, which, this is a cool exercise unto itself. What are all the things that fall into that? Then you have the
There are some
other side
interesting
of
ones.
the spectrum, which is like human to human, quite literally human to human interaction, which could, example of that could be your plumber, right? Like something that is quite literally going to be a function of humans interacting with other humans, which will not be agentic in any way, shape, or form. And that's the other side of it. So maybe you want to fall into that because that's an opportunity to move into. And then in the middle is going to be that bridge. And you see the human function in that bridge being almost, which is almost like the knowledge work to a certain extent today, right?
Hmm.
Being the workflow, is it workflow engineer, workflow consultant, workflow
Designer.
designer?
Yeah, I use the term designer. I mean, semantics, right? Like, there's going to be so many different terms and so many different things that, I mean, even the term workflow is so screwed up, right? By different marketing teams trying to
We call them
capture
profit
eyeballs
flows.
for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's just hard to land on a term. The essence that I'm trying to communicate is really like the art of translation between what is technically possible and like what a person's expectations are and abilities then become. Because really, you're like, we're gifting time to organizations that we support. We're like literally creating thousands of hours for their organization a year, literally. And that is not a light thing, like think about the extended capacity, the leverage that all these organizations are getting because they're having their systems intentionally designed to be as effective as possible with the cutting edge tools that are out there right now. And that is going to be a moving goalpost, right, over the next 18 months. But I think the demand for understanding and the art of translation is going to be key in the next 18 months.
Yeah, dude. I think the biggest case study, perhaps, that you know what you're talking about, and you're literally walking the walk, not just talking the talk, is new dad, kiddo, and you're able to take 12 weeks off from a business in which you own to be able to spend time with your family, which is like crazy. I mean, hopefully the audience listening is like, man, if that's like possible, then Tom knows what he's doing, and it's aspirational in terms of where we all want to get, and a great benchmark to also have. Give yourself a
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a wild experience so far. But yeah. definitely enjoying the moments we have.
For sure. And you should, and you earn them. For anybody who wants to get in touch with you after this episode, if they're listening to the end, these are the Glengarrys for sure. We're gonna link to everything in the show notes, but best place to find you and what's the key thing that you want them to take away?
Yeah, I'd say find me on YouTube at X-Ray Automation is our channel. We give free AI and automation tips every week. So I've been doing that every week for 4 years. So join me over there. And I'd say, if you can do anything in your business today that, relate to anything that we talked about today, it's just start. You don't need to wait for something. You'll constantly be learning, constantly be getting it wrong, and be comfortable with that. The best thing you can do is just start.
Dig it. I appreciate you taking the time today. Trust the process, commit to the journey, just get started. That's the pod, bootstrapping to billions.